All right, my computer did that awesome thing where it just likes to cut me off. Here we go, round two. Normally for me, I would be going straight into neurotransmitters, but we want to talk a little bit about the nervous system first and how this is broken down. Okay, so on your next slide, we're talking about the divisions of the nervous system. Okay, and what I want you to understand is that it's broken down in a couple different ways. So your first division is going to be your central nervous system and your peripheral nervous system. Okay, your central nervous system is probably one of the most simple concepts that you will ever hear in this class. Your central nervous system is comprised of your brain and your spinal cord. That is it, point blank, end of story. Okay? Your central nervous system is only your brain and your spinal cord. Okay? So, and I feel like people get tripped up on this. Like, what? It's that easy? It is that easy, guys. Brain, spinal cord, central nervous system. Now, everything else, so all of those nerve endings, all of those neurotransmitters, everything else, going to be part of your peripheral nervous system. Okay? Now, your peripheral nervous system gets broken down. And that's why I put this on the picture on the PowerPoint so that you can kind of understand a little bit how this happens, okay? So, your peripheral nervous system, it is broken down into somatic and autonomic. I'm not going to lie, we don't really talk about the somatic nervous system as much. Not that it's not important, but really autonomic is, for the sake of psychology, again, going to be what we really focus on. Okay? Your autonomic nervous system is in charge of fight or flight. Okay? I don't know if this is a new term for you guys, if this is something that you've heard before. Please, by all means, feel free to type something up in the discussion board. Let me know if this is a new concept for you. But your autonomic nervous system is in charge of fight or flight. So, once upon a time, I was running. Yes, I actually used to run back in the day. I was running, and I was running by a lake and saw an alligator climbing up out of the lake. Okay? Dross is not a big fan of alligators. Not really a big fan of wild animals in general. So I started to freak out. My autonomic nervous system kicked in. And I realized, okay, there's a lake coming up. There's an alligator coming out of it. You have two options. You can either sit here and try and wrestle an alligator. Not going to happen. I would like to live to see another day. Thank you very much. Or you can run, which you were already doing anyway. So here's the deal. It is fight or flight. You're choosing flight. What is going to happen after that is that my body is going to give me certain resources. It's going to give me adrenaline. It's going to control my heartbeat and my breathing so that I don't need as many resources to do what I was doing. Because I'm about to be in a scary situation. I don't know when I'm going to be able to stop running. I don't know when I'm going to be able to sit there and slow down to a walk, get some really deep breaths. All I know is that I'm in a threatening situation and my choices are to fight to get out of it or to try and run away from it. Either way, your body adapts accordingly, and it gives you extra resources to survive that stressful, dangerous, potentially threatening situation. And that's what your autonomic nervous system does. And that is more specifically what your sympathetic nervous system does. Okay? Remember this. Your sympathetic nervous system has sympathy for you. It wants you to survive. So it is going to kick in to give you extra resources and to give you an evolutionary advantage in order to survive that situation. Okay? That's what it does. That's its function. Now, your body only has so many resources to give. I'm not going to be able to run for 3 days straight. Okay? I'm going to need to sleep at some point. I'm going to need to eat at some point. So, what happens is after my body has survived this stressful situation, I see that I'm in a safe area, my parasympathetic nervous system is going to kick in. My parasympathetic nervous system undoes everything that the sympathetic nervous system just did. So, it says, hey, she was running for a really long time on a less amount of oxygen than she's used to. She needs that oxygen back. So I'm going to be able to take deeper breaths. I'm It's going to control the sweat in my body to help me regulate temperature so that my body returns to a normal temperature again. It is going to say, hey, you've been doing this for a while. Why don't you get some water? So my parasympathetic nervous system kicks in so that I recognize thirst and hunger. Because the sympathetic nervous system overran all that. It said, you don't have time for these things. You need to survive, and then we'll worry about this. Parasympathetic nervous system comes in, undoes all of those things, and says, okay, it's time to refuel what you've lost so far. Okay? So hopefully that makes sense. In case you need a breakdown of it, in case you're a definitions person, in case you need it in words, whatever you need, it's all on page 64. But again, I strongly encourage you to look at the diagram and the PowerPoint too, tie those things to words to make sure that you really understand it. In terms of afferent and efferent nerves, I'm not going to be testing on that. I'm not going that deep. Again, main thing that I want you to concentrate on here is your divisions of the nervous system, particularly central and peripheral, and then autonomic, systematic, and sympathetic and parasympathetic. Know those things, understand those concepts very well, and work with them, okay? Let's see, moving on here. So the next slide talks a little bit about the autonomic nervous system and what some of those things that the sympathetic nervous system does for you. It dilates your pupils so that you can take in more light and see if there are more potentially threatening things on the horizon. It relaxes your bronchi, so your breathing tubes in your lungs, and makes breathing a little bit more efficient. It jacks up your heart rate so that it gets blood flowing through your body to make you run faster or to meet any physical demands that you may have. Secretes adrenaline and noradrenaline, again, to dull pain and increase performance. And then your parasympathetic is your rest and digest. So hopefully that makes sense. And is what kind of undoes all of these things. So moving on from that, I'm going to be talking about neurotransmitters. Okay? Moving on in the book, 66, that's what kind of explains what was on PowerPoint 2. This talks about the anatomy of the neuron, which we've kind of talked about already. But talks about glial cells, mirror neurons, I'm not really focusing too much on, but again, no dendrites, axon, things like that. Talks about the myelin sheath as well. Has a picture of Jack Osborne because he has MS, and again, that's the hardening of the myelin around the sheath. 68 and 69. 68, I'm kind of bypassing. That talks about action potential and the activation of the neurons and how it changes the polarization of the neurons. I'm not doing it. I'm not going that in depth, guys. So don't stress yourself over that stuff. 69 is when they start talking about synapses and neurotransmitters, bringing us to where we are now in the PowerPoint, and talking about the roles of each one. Acetylcholine, ACH. This is big for movement and learning. Okay. Let's see. Found throughout the central and peripheral nervous system. So you're looking at muscle function. That's a big one. And again, your movement. That's really what a lot of it does. Individuals with Alzheimer's, they have an acetylcholine deficiency. Because again, this has to do with learning as well. So in terms of these things, ACH, you have this handy little slide on slide 6 in the PowerPoint. ACH, movement and learning. Okay, I want you to tie those things together. I'm not going to go in depth to ask about the Alzheimer's and its relationship with GABA, with ACH, but because of how it affects learning, that is, what happens. So, now GABA and glutamate. One of these is, they kind of play off each other because one is excitatory and one is inhibitory, which means one's going to get you up and going and the other one's going to calm you down. So GABA is your inhibitory one and glutamate is your excitatory one. So throughout PowerPoint 6, remember those things. And for GABA and glutamate, I'm not going to ask what specifically they are, but I am going to, again, stressing that importance of excitatory and inhibitory. Okay? Norepinephrine is a stress hormone. And it is one of those things that will get you up and moving. So, has to do with fear, excites your heart muscle, intestines, things like that. And it also helps with alertness. So, norepinephrine it and adrenaline are hand in hand. So, that kind of alligator situation that I was talking about earlier, adrenaline, norepinephrine would be kicking in. Norepinephrine, too, can influence your pain thresholds. So, that is something to keep in mind as well. Dopamine helps control voluntary movement, affects sleep, mood, and attention. This is one of our happy neurotransmitters, okay? A lot of these have to do with our mood. Dopamine and serotonin in particular strongly influence our mood. Little bit more so serotonin, but dopamine as well. Dopamine is also associated with reward centers of your brain. One of the things that you may find, I saw an article the other day that said cell phones are like cocaine to children. And I'm like, hopefully one of the things that you're doing throughout this process is critical thinking. And for somebody to say, oh, they're like cocaine, your brain should be like, wait, how are they like cocaine? What? Are they spending the same amount of money on cell phones as cocaine? Is it screen time? And that's what they were contesting, was that it was screen time. And that what they have in common is that release of dopamine. That reward center is being activated. And what that does is, because you are creating it artificially by an experience, that whenever it happens naturally in the environment, it has a decreased tolerance to it. That it's like, oh yeah, this is normal. This is what I expect. So that's one of kind of the problems with screen time, is that triggering or activation of the reward system and secretion of dopamine. So, anything else that I missed on that? Hopefully not. Dopamine is associated low levels with Parkinson's disease. One of the things that they were doing for treatment of Parkinson's at one point was L-Dopa, which is artificial dopamine. Don't know how prevalent that treatment is now, but at one point that is one thing they were doing. Again, kind of like ACH, this one has a lot to do with learning. But dopamine, remember reward centers, remember happy. Remember that dopamine and serotonin are your happy neurotransmitters. Serotonin is involved in sleep regulation, also mood, attention, learning, joy, happiness. That's a lot of what these things are a part of, and it helps control your mood. So, a lot of typical antidepressants are what we call SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. Bear with me for a second on this. So, let's say that my fingers are nerve receptors, okay? Or neurotransmitter receptors. We all know that the brain secretes these certain neurotransmitters. So let's say that my brain releases 5 units of dopamine or of serotonin. Okay? Serotonin is going to try to fit into each one of these receptors. Let's say that it hangs out for a while and you have 2 that never make it to their receptors. At some point, because of the nervous system and the electrical impulses, your body's going to tell your brain, hey, there's extra serotonin hanging around up here. The brain needs to reclaim it so that we could put it somewhere else if it's not needed here anymore. Okay, it's called synaptic pruning. That's another kind of term that goes along with it. Your brain adjusts to the demands that it's facing. Anyway, so your brain's going to go back, and these 2 cells of serotonin that never made it to their homes, it's going to be taken back up by the brain, and it's going to be redistributed. Or if it stays in the system long enough and it doesn't find a home, then the brain stops making as much. Well, you keep throwing 5 out here, and then only 3 of them make it to where they need to be. Just give us 3. Okay? Selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. So a lot of these are kind of your Prozacs, Paxils, things like that. These are medications that say, hey, these 2 serotonin didn't make it to their receptors. They need a little bit more time. And it keeps that serotonin in your brain longer, or in your system longer, so that it can make it to those receptors, thereby increasing your mood or elevating your mood. Because at this point, your body is balanced. We like homeostasis, right? At this point, your body is balanced and everything is where it needs to be. So hopefully that makes sense. Endorphins, kind of going along with norepinephrine, this dulls pain. It is structurally similar to opiates. They serve a similar function, but these things are created in your body naturally. Again, depressing nervous system activity and eliminating pain. Oxytocin is a stress hormone. And this is important because of love and bonding. They call it the love hormone, and whenever you fall in love, whenever you are having a romantic experience, or when you're bonding with someone, you see elevated amounts of oxytocin. So that's kind of going through slide 6. Hopefully that was explaining in a nutshell enough what each of these things do. So going on to how the brain is studied, talking about ablation or brain lesioning, killing or damaging parts of the brain to see what happens. One of the things we've learned is that our right brain, the right hemisphere, is associated with facial recognition. So we would never do this because it's not ethical. But in people that have had traumatic brain injury in the right side of the brain, one of the things that they'll look at is facial recognition. And it shows, again, plasticity, how much the left brain has taken over that function since the right brain can't do it anymore. And B, how strongly that activity is tied to your right brain. Okay? Let's see, going along to 3D image of the brain to examine damage in shape. You're looking at a CT scan. EEG, you're looking at the brain's electrical activity. We talked a little bit about sleep and sleep spindles. That's one of the things that you would see in EEG. So that's pretty cool. fMRI looks at, again, kind of your brain and activity levels in the brain. Going along with that too. Carrying on, right now we're at about page 76-ish. It looks at the amount of oxygen in the brain and what's getting oxygen and what's active and what's functioning, to see, oh, hey, this area of the brain, that's Broca's area, and they must be talking. Versus that's Wernicke's area. So they're listening to somebody speak and comprehending what they say. That's what you're looking at. And then, moving on from that, PET scans, looks at metabolic changes, including glucose in the brain. So glucose levels, that's going to be part of PET imaging. Not going to lie, for the sake of this class, biggest one that you're going to see, because you're going to see it again, is going to be fMRI. Whenever we start talking about schizophrenia, there's going to be a video that actually shows an fMRI of someone who is actively hallucinating. That is going to be the biggest one that you have to contend with and to understand. So hopefully that makes sense. So I think that pretty much covers it for chapter 3. Let me double check. Or for part of it at least. The next part is where we start talking about brain anatomy, the limbic system, things like that. It's key to emotion and memory. 2 basic structures of it. Looking at that. Really, this is way more in depth than I had intended on getting, guys. It really is. So, see here. Yeah, so with this, the biggest things that I wanted you to look at were the amygdala, and this is what controls what we call kind of primitive emotions. We're talking about fear, anger, and aggression, and your hippocampus. Your hippocampus is key to memory, okay? Forming new memories, things like that. They're not stored there, but this is where those memories are formed, and this is where your brain kind of starts saying, okay, is this important? Yes, file that in long-term memory. No, we just need to know this for a little while. Okay, it can hang around for a little while in short-term memory. We'll regurgitate it for this test, and then we'll completely forget it. That is how our brain works. So, again, mentioned this just a second ago. Speech production and speech comprehension, Broca's area, speech production, Wernicke's area, speech comprehension. Left hemisphere is your verbal, okay? This is tends to house your logic, your mathematical abilities, your language abilities. That's all your left hemisphere. Your right hemisphere is in charge of spatial recognition, facial recognition, and emotion. People tend to associate this with your artistic side of your brain. And it's because of that spatial, visuospatial abilities. And then your corpus callosum is a bundle of nerve fibers that connect both. One thing that'll happen sometimes is that with children that have epileptic disorders and have seizure disorders, sometimes they can have surgery that will disconnect the left and right hemispheres of their brain, because what's happening is those electrical impulses are colliding and the communication messages are not getting to where they need to go, and the person does not respond well to that and will have a seizure. So sometimes keep in mind, this is brain surgery. You have to crack open a skull. You have to go in. You have to sever parts of the brain. But if it's a choice between that or having 15 seizures a day, for doctors, it warrants the risk. It warrants the surgery. Okay? So, that corpus callosum is those nerve fibers that is sometimes severed in an attempt to minimize seizures. So hopefully that makes sense. This chapter also talked about Phineas Gage, which I included a video on in the last chapter, I think it was. So that was pretty cool. Also shows exactly what part of his brain was affected. Again, you're talking about the frontal lobe and how it affects personality. For all of your stuff on speech production, speech comprehension, and your hemisphere divisions and split brain operations, all of that, you're going to be looking at page 86. So hopefully that makes sense, and you can find that in your book. Moving on to slide 10. This is where chapter 4 begins. So, moving on with that. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and do this. Sensation is detecting stimuli. So actually hearing a sound, actually tasting food, just saying, oh, hey, this is here. Okay? That is sensation. Perception is how you organize it. Like playing Name That Tune, you're going to hear the notes that are being played or the notes being sung. And then perception is what allows you to say, oh, hey, I know this song. That's Taylor Swift or whoever it is that, you cool young kids are listening to nowadays. I'm old. Sorry. So sensation and perception. Sensation is just detecting that stimuli. Perception is how you organize it. So, oh my God, this is really spicy. I can't deal with this. Or, this is what this is. I'm not going to lie to you. Whenever I started this chapter, I had really good intentions. I was going to talk a lot more about bottom up and top down processing. Not necessarily the case, and you're definitely not going to have to know it in terms for assessment. But it's kind of, you have an idea and then you build on it versus you have a concept and then you break it down. That's really how I look at it. Thresholds. This is one of those things that I think the video does a better job of explaining it than I do. I'm going to be really honest. Your absolute threshold is when you can actually detect it. One of the things that I got to do, being in the military, I got to take a lot of hearing tests. You put headphones on, and then you press a button whenever you hear a beep. And they were testing absolute thresholds. At what point, how loud did something have to be before we detected that stimuli? Your difference threshold is whenever you have two different stimuli, whenever you notice that there's a difference. So maybe I'm watching TV and I have the TV on volume 12. Well, if I turn it up to 13 or 14, probably not going to notice a whole lot of difference. But if I take it from 12 up to 50, I'm going to notice a huge difference. So at your difference threshold is when do you notice that difference? Let's see. Weber's Law, watch the video on this. I'm telling you, this is going to explain it a lot better than I ever can. Once you get into, they particularly use audio stimuli, but once you get into louder volumes, you tend to notice less of a difference versus if I start talking like this, and then maybe I talk like this, and then I talk way up here. Weber's Law is what helps you understand what the differences are between the two stimuli and when it works. Signal detection theory, explaining how various factors influence our ability to detect weak signals in the environment. If I am just chilling at home, which you see, that's exactly what I'm doing now, I'm probably not going to notice every rustling of leaves outside. I'm probably going to not notice every crick or squeak that happens, but I'm going to notice it more now than whenever I'm having a slamming party and I have 50 people over and there's 18 different conversations going on. Environmental factors play a big part on or in how well we detect stimuli. And that's pretty much what that is indicating. In terms of your senses, what I really want you to know, cornea. Your cornea protects your eye. Your iris is the colored part of your eye. Your pupil is what dilates in order to let light in. So if you're in a bright area, your pupil is going to contract to limit the amount of light getting in. Versus whenever you're walking through the woods alone at night or walking down a dark alley, you're in a potentially threatening situation. Your pupil is going to dilate to let the maximum amount of light in to increase your visibility, thereby giving you an evolutionary advantage. With hearing, what I want you to understand that it is really controlled by the movement of hairs in your ear. You have three main bones that allow for this. And your hammer, anvil, and stirrup, they vibrate. What happens is that the fluid vibrates inside the cochlea, and it bends hair cells so that certain neurons fire and you hear that audio stimuli. Tympanic membrane, I'm not going to be testing on that, but that is important for the sake of hearing. Remember hammer, anvil, stirrup, and understand that it has to do with the vibration and causing the fluid to vibrate and how it bends hair cells. You guys see what I mean when I tell you that I'm not a biology teacher, right? But yeah, biggest things for this: cornea, pupil, hammer, anvil, and stirrup, vibrating hairs, and cochlea. Focus on all of those things for that. Watch the videos. Again, this will explain it better than I ever could. I'm not a biology teacher, but this breaks it down in terms that, and explains it in a way that makes it a lot friendlier. So hopefully that helps. Last but not least, number 13, talking about kinesthesia. It's a sensory system that conveys information about the body position and movement. It's not really a single organ type thing. What it is, though, is kind of your sense of awareness of things around you. I know I can get this close to the computer without touching the screen. Kinesthesia. I know that there's a glass down by my foot, and if I move my foot an inch and a half, I'm going to knock over my glass of water. Kinesthesia is what gives you that sense of where you are in relation to the things around you. Okay? Yeah, body position and movement. Obviously, people, gymnasts, things like that, athletes, very high senses of kinesthesia. Proprioceptors, specialized nerve endings located in muscles and joints that provide information about body location and orientation. Your vestibular sense, this one, there's most likely going to be a question on this on the test. Haven't decided for 100%, but it's a sense of balance and equilibrium. And then depth perception, your ability to perceive three-dimensional objects and judge distances. So, hey, I'm this far away from this light that's yellow. I'm going to gun it to make it through. Because depth perception, you feel like you can get out of the way in time. Really hope you have a good sense of depth perception, that you don't get stuck under that light when it's red and bad things happen. But your ability to judge distances and see how far away something is and react accordingly. I hope this has worked out well for you guys. Hopefully that'll do it all. There's not that many questions on the quiz, but I am going to spare you on that. Hopefully you have everything you need from the book and the PowerPoint. If you find that you do not, post in the thread. Let me know. I'll help you out. Also, if I'm not going in depth enough for some of you guys, you're not getting something, let me know. I'll expand on it. I am changing the due dates for quizzes 3 and 4, and I'm pushing them back out to next Friday. Okay? So hopefully that'll give you enough time. Also, that will hopefully give you enough time to get everything that you need to done for the test and give you enough time to ask any questions that you may have on that. So hopefully that'll do. And if you need anything, let me know. I apologize again for the delay. I had company from out of town, but hopefully you guys are well on your way. If you have any issues, please don't hesitate to ask, okay? I'm here for you guys. Email me, post in the thread, whatever you need to do. If you're not getting it, let me know now. The sooner the better, because I can work with that. I can accommodate that. We can do whatever we need to do. But hopefully that'll give you a sense of what we need. So hope you guys are doing awesome. If you have any issues, let me know. Otherwise, I will see you guys later. Bye.